Hey friends, my name is Julie and welcome back to my farm. Today I want to talk to you all about the Muscovy duck. In this video I'm going to go over just some basic information about Muscovies, and then I'll cover just some of the reasons that we absolutely love having them on this farm. Now, Muscovies are a large breed of duck. Despite having a Russian sounding name, these ducks are actually native to Mexico, Central and South America, and they exist in the wild still in many places, including the United States. In fact, it's not really clear where the name of this duck came from. Now, these ducks are unique in a lot of ways. They are the only breed of duck that is not a descendant of the mallard. And in fact, they are just as closely related to geese and turkeys as they are to other ducks. And some people even consider them more of a goose than a duck. The native varieties were mostly black with some white, but today they come in a wide variety of colors, including white, brown, grays, and blues. They can have yellow, blue, or brown eyes, and they can even have different colors on their bill. And speaking of their bill, one of the most distinctive features of these ducks are the red caruncles that they have around the base of their bill. It's this feature that turns a lot of people off to this breed of duck because they think they're kind of gross or ugly. But we happen to think that they are beautiful, especially when the males really show off their iridescent colors in the sunlight. The males and the females look quite different. The males can get really large, up to 15 pounds, whereas the females stay quite small and top out at about 7 pounds. They also tend to not have as flashy a color as the males do. These ducks also communicate very differently than other breeds of duck. They don't really have a quack. The males emit more of a hissing or huffing noise. And sometimes the females will give out a little pip, especially when excited or talking to their ducklings. But they're largely non-vocal. They mainly communicate with each other through body language. They have a large flat tail, and you'll see them waving it back and forth to express that they're excited or anxious. You'll also see them weaving and bobbing their heads at each other. And often during mating season, you'll see the males puff up a big crest of feathers on the top of their head in order to impress the ladies. Muscovies are typically raised for a couple of reasons, mainly their meat. With their long, large bodies, they deliver a lot of breast meat, and their meat is much lower in fat than other breeds of duck. The meat is a really dark, deep red. It almost looks like beef, and often people will describe it as having a very similar flavor to beef. The females are also pretty decent egg layers. They lay between 60 to 120 eggs per season, but they are also great mothers. They are really known for how prolific they can be, which is impressive because they have a very long incubation time. It takes 35 days for their eggs to hatch. Females will sit on nests of up to 20 eggs at a time, and they do a very good job of raising their young, keeping an eye on them for up to 12 weeks after they hatch. The females tend to be really proficient flyers, whereas the males, not so much. They can get off the ground if they need to, but for the most part, they don't. This tendency for the females to want to fly is actually one of the reasons a lot of people don't like them. They can be difficult to contain in a fenced area, and especially if you're trying to grow a garden, it can be very difficult to keep them out of it. Fortunately, on this farm, that's not really a problem for us. Like most ducks, they are omnivores, so they will eat grass and other forage, but in a free-range system like ours, their diet mainly consists of bugs. We also do offer them some feed. When we're raising ducklings, we'll give them a high-protein game bird or chick starter, and for the older flock, we put out our layer feed. They appreciate access to water, just like any other kind of duck, but they don't swim nearly as much as some of the other breeds. We have a little pond in the center of our property, and the ducks will venture out here once in a while, but they definitely don't spend all day in here like I believe some other breeds would. So why do we love the Muscovy so much as opposed to all the other breeds of ducks? Well, we've tried a few. We started with some Indian runners. We got some khaki Campbells. We've had a lot of Pekings over the years, but the Muscovies have just done the best on our farm. And the reason we don't have any of those other breeds anymore, and we are just left with the Muscovies, is because predators killed off all of those other ducks. We think a lot of the smaller ducks were snatched up by owls, and we know we have foxes that come through the property on a pretty regular basis. Despite putting up electric fences for protection, putting lights up, offering them shelters to go into at night. None of those other breeds of ducks were able to evade the predators as well as the Muscovies. I think part of that is the large body of the males and that ability to fly the females. Now, we have tried a couple of different strategies to combat the predator problem on our property, but as you may have noticed, we really like this farm to be a habitat for wildlife. We intentionally keep it kind of crazy and wild for that purpose. And part of the trade-off in doing that is that predators are going to come on this property to try to control the smaller prey species. And you can't blame a fox for trying to eat. Now, all the animals on our farm have to have another job or purpose aside from just the food they provide. And the reason we wanted the ducks was mainly for pest control. Free-range ducks can do an excellent job of controlling flies and mosquitoes and a lot of the other biting insects that we experience here, especially in the hot, humid summers of North Carolina. And I cannot imagine farming in this climate without those ducks around. They do an amazing job taking care of the insects. There were seasons in the past where we didn't have any or not enough ducks on the property, and we got eaten alive by mosquitoes and biting flies in the summertime. But we have really noticed, especially in the areas where the ducks like to congregate, at times there are almost no insects present. It's amazing how much they can eat. You can see them jumping and biting them out of the air, taking them off of the grass and the leaves. They are voracious hunters. And I mentioned that the females are great mothers. Well, for us, that's fantastic because I don't have an incubator right now. And honestly, it's just much easier if the mama ducks take care of that themselves. And for the first 3 or 4 years that we had the Muscovies, the moms actually did a really good job of raising the young to adulthood. Now, this past year or two, we've had a little more predator pressure, it seems, and we've lost a lot of those ducklings. So now, while we still allow the moms to sit on their nests and hatch the eggs, once the ducklings are hatched and they're out and about, we actually scoop them up and we put them in our brooder. And we raise them for the first 2 to 3 months. Then we transfer them to our duck house. And once they're accustomed to that being their home base, they're allowed to free range on the property with all the other ducks. As far as the food they provide, they lay large, beautiful, delicious eggs. And the meat we harvest from our extra drakes is really something special, especially that beautiful dark red breast meat. Since they don't quack, they're very quiet and they're really very chill. I have 3 Catahoula leopard dogs and they have a very high prey drive. So if they see a loose chicken out and they scare it and it runs around and it squawks, they're gonna wanna chase it and catch it. But these Muscovies don't really do that. Sometimes they barely even notice the dogs or don't even bother to get out of their way when one's passing. In fact, we have to be a little bit careful not to run them over in the driveway because they like to hang out under the vehicles. And I guess it is one of the small drawbacks of having a free range flock is that they can and do go wherever they want, which means they kind of poop wherever they want. But we have found them to be a little bit trainable. Daryl recently built a new duck house for us to transition our babies from the brooder into, and so we train them to that immediately. And even once they start free ranging, we always make sure that they go in there at night, and so we can lock them up and keep them safe. Because even though they have done a lot better than any other duck, we still do have predators that threaten them. But since they've been sleeping in the duck house, we've had 0 problems. And while it did take me probably 4 or 5 nights of actively herding them to teach them to go in there when the sun goes down and to use the ramp to get up, they did learn, and now I can sleep soundly knowing that all my ducks are safe. We have found that our other free-range ducks really like to sleep where there's light, and I'm sure this is a really good deterrent for predators such as owls. So Daryl had the brilliant idea of putting up this string of Edison lights at the entrance to our duck house. Especially with the longer days, these guys have decided they want to stay out a little bit later. And then it gets really dark, and then it can be scary to kind of cross from wherever they've been hanging out for the day back to the house. So I think these lights are really going to help them find their way. If we're training young ducks to the house, we'll leave food and water in there because they have to be trapped in there for a day or 2. But when we're just putting them in there overnight, we don't. And that is because ducks can be really messy, especially with their water. You can imagine over an 8-hour period that they might get a little bored, and then they start playing with their water more than just trying to get a drink. And they're mostly sleeping through the night, so they can definitely wait till morning to come out and get some food and water. We do bed this house down with some shavings, and we've got it lined with an old tarp so that it's easy to clean out, because of course they still do poop in there. It worked.
Haven't you seen those ones where they go up the hills and wind up face first in it?
No.
No, they're all over the place.
Oh. One thing we haven't done is really train the females to lay their eggs in any one spot. We pretty much let them pick wherever they want to nest, and they've done a really good job of picking pretty secluded, safe spots. We're hoping that over time they might adapt to using the duck house, but it's new, so we'll just have to wait and see. Well guys, I hope you've enjoyed this intro into Muscovy ducks. We absolutely love having them as a part of this farm, and I really hope that you will consider giving them a chance on yours as well. If you'd like to see the last video where I go over all the new things happening on the farm this spring, you can check it out right here. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you next time.